Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is One Day Today, episode 145. I'm going to introduce you to our guest in just a moment, Dan, who I'm excited about having. But before, I just want to say hello and say thank you for being here with us. And so, you might hear a bunch of background noise because I'm in thunderous Nashville, Tennessee, where just as we started, a huge thunderstorm and wind. All the cats are running around. So don't mind the thunder and the storms and the cats running around. Ooh, very ominous thunder, but we're going to get through this either way. So welcome everybody. And I'll start off with, just an inquiry. If you knew, no matter who you are, if you knew that what you had uniquely could affect people in a way that nobody else could, what would that allow you to do? What fulfillment would that give you? How would that change your actions, your behaviors, your thoughts, your feelings about yourself, about the world, about your neighbor, about people around you? And if you were living in your own world, in your own life, that you got to share what you uniquely have, that uplifted, that fulfilled you to the core of you, that you could feel and everybody else around you could feel, because you're so in the zone of knowing who you are and who you choose to be in every moment. What would that allow you to do? Who would that allow you to be? And how would that impact everyone in your life and everybody in your community, on your street, in your state, in your country, in your world? And I would assert, you have something unique. You do have a gift. You do have, I would assert, many gifts. But this is the game we play, is what's possible when we live into those gifts, when we celebrate, you know, the unique gifts that each of us have, and that you have, and he has, and she has, and they have. What's possible when we focus on what we uniquely have to uplift and empower each other? And the truth is, I don't even know. It's unimaginable what's possible. It's infinite possibilities. And that's what this is about, is when we actually listen, hold space for ourselves and each other. What's possible? What new recipes, what new music, what new scientific discoveries, what spiritual collaborations. It's just limitless. And that's what inspires me, and that's why I'm here. But let's hop to it. Let's say hello to Matthew in Colorado, and I'm glad that we're both landlocked now, and he's not. I mean, I'm not glad you're not in Hawaii, but I'm just not jealous because you're not in Hawaii. Although Colorado is beautiful.
Oh, Abram, buddy, you can fly out there anytime you want.
Well, you were one of the reasons to go out there, but I will go out there.
I'll be back. I'm only going to be out here for about a year or so, and we're going back most likely to Kauai first to spend some time there, and then probably back to Big Island. Yeah, but
Sounds awful. Yeah.
I know, right? Yeah, it's absolutely wondrous, and I mean, it's Hawaii and it's beautiful. Don't get me wrong, it is. But at the same time, it's still, how do I want to put this? It's still Western society. So like
it is.
it, there's a lot of opportunity out there to get out and explore and enjoy nature and reconnect with nature, and particularly the nature spirits that I really enjoy interacting with. Um, but you do still have to work for it. Like it's not a free pass, and each island seems to have its own personality almost. Like it's really funny how the lessons get presented on the different islands. Like to me, Big Island is the rebellious teenage daughter, and so like there's a lot of wisdom and there's a lot of intuition, but there's also a lot of drama and a lot of fire and a lot of like pain and suffering if you don't learn your lessons. Like it just Pele, like in my experience, like she will smack you down if you're not really picking up what she's trying to teach you. And Kauai is, to me, she was like this very loving, very caring, elderly matriarch, grandmother almost. And she would take care of me and nourish me so long as I was not lying to myself in any way, shape, or form. But the second there was any amount of self-deception or anything that I was convinced that I needed, it got taken away instantaneously. Like money was the first thing to go. No money, no nothing. Like, then shelter went, and like, she basically showed me, you don't really need anything. Like, if you trust and you follow your heart, you follow your intuition, everything you need will be provided for you. And that has not failed me yet. Not since I really took that lesson to heart. Maui is like the kind of like fun uncle who takes you places that your parents really don't want you to go, but you learn some really valuable lessons by going there and experiencing that. And then, Oahu is much more the dad. He's a bit stricter. There's certain rules that you have to follow when you're in his house, and if you don't, you get punished. The only one I haven't experienced really yet is Molokai and Lanai. And so I don't really know their personalities, but Molokai really strikes me as the mother. And Lanai, I don't know, like maybe the older brother if I'm tuning into it, but like, it's Western culture, and at the same time, it's a totally different world out there. And I very much hope you get to go experience it.
I look forward to going back as an adult. Well, before we bring Dan in, I want to let him, share. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we bring Dan in?
I normally don't do this, but I want to speak a bit to your inquiry that you present at the beginning of every episode. I feel like today it's asking for a little bit more clarity. And so I just have one question that popped up when you were talking. I just want to pose your inquiry in slightly different words.
Yeah.
If you had the courage to do anything, what would it be? And I don't need an answer. I'm just throwing it out there for you, the audience, maybe for Dan if he wants to weigh into that question. But that's how I would pose that inquiry today, is if you had the courage to do anything, what would it be? And what would your life look like if you did that?
I love it. That's a profound inquiry, and I'm gonna sit with that because it is today that question's relevant, and every today.
Indeed. So on that note, let's do this thing.
Yeah, let's bring in. Please welcome to the virtual stage for the first time. Welcome Dan Silberberg.
Aloha.
Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Abram. It's a pleasure to be here with everybody, and thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. We are excited to have you. Excited to have you share. And we're just gonna have you, if you're ready for it, we're gonna have you jump right in. But welcome, Dan, and the stage is yours.
Perfect. Thanks. So I think everybody knows about Star Wars, and it starts out in a galaxy far, far away. And I'd like to say that for all of us, we started in a galaxy far, far away. And somehow spiritually, we chose to be born, and we chose to enter the world, and we chose to do it at this particular time. And we came here with an idea of what we were here to deliver into the world to make it a better place where people could thrive. And so for me, and I think for all of us, it is the hero's journey. It's Joseph Campbell's framework that whether you like Star Wars or you like Harry Potter or you like the Tolkien trilogy or The Hobbit, they're all on this framework of the journey. And one of the real questions for all of us is, will we answer the call? Some of us do, and some of us don't. So at one point, Luke says to Obi-Wan, I want to become a Jedi. And he thought that's really what he wanted to do. And he thought, well, Obi-Wan won't take me up on it. So it's good for me to be able to say it, but then I won't really have to do anything. And lo and behold, Obi-Wan replies, "I'm ready when you are." And Luke then goes, "Well, I'm not ready now, but I will be later." And that's the first call of the journey. I think we all are given that opportunity. Some of us take it, some of us dive in, some of us are fearful, and we never take the call. And so I'll share with you some of my journey. I started out, I grew up in the Midwest. I came from a family of pretty well-meaned and lots of opportunities to do things. I went to summer camps, I traveled, I was in business meetings with my dad flying around the country when I was 9 years old. I was going to business meetings at the office, and I was kind of groomed to be in business. My grandfather was one of the largest landowners in Wisconsin prior to the Depression. He ended up starting a bank. And so I think business and accomplishment was a big deal in terms of my DNA. And so you would think that given all of that, then when I was in the 6th grade, I evidently finished the year early, and the principal called my parents and said, "You need to send him to a college preparatory school," that I went to. And that got me into a very top school and ended up doing that. And then my career began. And so when I went for my first job, the person interviewing me said he wouldn't hire me. And I go, "Well, why is that?" And he said, "Because you only know what it is to accomplish things. You haven't really had any setbacks." Well, he didn't really know about my family system. And this is really where all of us grow up. So what happens is we come into the world and we have a primary caregiver. In my case, I grew up in the 50s, so the primary caregiver was mom. And we get these downloaded, what I call the downloaded paradigm of others' beliefs, values, systems, way to act in the world. We get their fears, we get their considerations, we get what hasn't worked for them in their life, therefore it shouldn't work with us. We have no analytic filter. So between mom, family, early school, societal norm, and cultural norm, this is who we're thrown to be. And at some point in our lives, we know that it's not authentic to us. It's really someone else. And so for me, it started my search for truth. I grew up in a family, as I say, that was well off financially, but it wasn't well off emotionally. So I had a father who was emotionally absent, a lot of irresponsible anger, and a lot of deceit came in the family because he ended up actually having affairs. On my mom's side, they also had a lot of deceit. And so I could sit and look at that and go, well, I guess I'll just be deceitful like the rest of them. And instead, I chose a path to search for truth. And so that led me on my journey, starting really at the age of 6. And by the time I was 11, my parents had said, "We're done arguing with you because you're going to do what you want anyway." And so what happened out of that was a total disdain for authority. And how could I, as a 6-year-old, have to be a parent to people who were in their 30s and they were the children? And what happens to a lot of boys, and certainly in my case did, is when dad is absent, emotionally, physically, not available, mom co-ops the boy. And the boy is not ready or able or should even be put in the position of having to fill being the confidant, being the emotional reflection, and actually being the partner. So I think that was a fairly traumatic experience for me. I think it is for a lot of boys. And then on top of it, we've got the societal code, which is don't complain, put your big boy pants on, don't cry, don't complain, don't show emotion. And there's these cues and codes that we get in society. So now, on top of getting a default paradigm of beliefs, we're now getting a societal code that also doesn't work with us. So what I did in learning about disdain for authority, it wasn't the disdain of the outward authority that was the worst. It was I didn't trust my own authority. And that led me on my journey then to sovereignty and to be my own authority. And to take that journey has been 40 years of doing men's work and personal growth and development.
Oh, looks like he's having a bit of technical difficulty, so I'm going to jump back in here really quick. Abram, you still with me? Oh, you're muted, buddy.
There we go. Yeah, we'll wait for Dan to get reconnected, but I was immersed in his story so far.
Yeah, that I very much know exactly what he means. That emotionally absent dad, that was very much my family, and I did like I had a really good friend who put it very well. Actually, she's like, "You had no business being the surrogate husband." And she like that's what it was, like business or not, like whether it should have been that way or shouldn't have been that way doesn't even like that's not even the question to me anymore. I used to be really mad about this, and really mad at mom and dad, more mom than anything. But I'm wondering if this is where he's going to be going with it or not when he comes back in. But eventually I came to this place of recognizing that, as cliche as this may sound, they really were doing the best they could. And yeah, emotionally they are, and sometimes, and they were and still are children. Like they never grew up emotionally. They never had the chance. And so that question that he asked, that Dan asked about, what is it to be a 6-year-old and be the adult? Oh, I think he's coming back in now.
Yeah, the internet went out. I don't know if it's on your side or my side.
I think it was your side.
Okay.
Yeah, we lost you for a second.
Yeah, we lost you for a minute, but you're back now. So we just to give you a heads up, we were kind of just discussing where you were at in your story. We lost you right about the time of being the surrogate adult, basically, like having to be the adult in. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to hop back in and go for it.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Welcome back.
Yep. So we had a little internet problem there. So I want to pick up that as a 6-year-old, one of the things I experienced, and I think a lot of boys do, is that if dad is absent, if dad doesn't show up, if dad isn't emotionally available, if dad doesn't have an intimate relationship with mom, if dad, in my case, was sleeping with other women and got caught, what happens is that little boys get co-opted by mom. And what I mean by co-opted is that I became the emotional surrogate. I became the confidant. I became the one who got manipulated, that if I was to be lovable, I had to do what mom wanted. And that's a pretty destructive thing for a 6-year-old, because there's no way of having the adult ability to fight that off, to stand up and have sovereignty, to be your own agent, to be on your own side. There's fear of abandonment, fear of not being loved, fear of survival. And so all of those experiences led to, I think, one of the cores of my journey was to be a seeker of truth. And so one of my triggers, and one of the things that I find really irresponsible, are people who are deceitful And because my father had so much irresponsible guilt and anger about it, one of the things I don't allow is anybody to yell at me. They're more than happy to say whatever you can't offend me by what you say, but the tone of your voice and the loudness of it is not going to be tolerated. So that's something as a wise man I can do. That was something as a 6-year-old boy driving the bus I couldn't do. So on the one hand, was it traumatic? Yes. Did it take a lot of work to get beyond it? Yes. However, it also made me really independent. It gave me a sense of my own ownership. It gave me opportunities to go out into the world in ways that if I were coddled in the environment I was in, I probably wouldn't have been able to do. So if you were to be in an interview today and someone were to say to you, who are you? Who am I? I don't think most people would say I'm gifted. I'm really an incredible person. I have an inner genius and a gift and an imprint to bring to the world that no one else has. And that may be because you might think I'm not good enough. You might think I'm not worthy. You might think, who the hell am I to be that gifted? You might think we're not supposed to brag. That's arrogant. And there would be all these judgments that would be out there for consideration. But the truth of the matter is, what's so for you? And so when I grew up, I was put on a pedestal and I was told I was perfect. So no matter what I did, it got applause from mom and it got applause from grandma. And of all the grandchildren, I was the favorite. Sounds like a fun idea, but it's not really. So what it ends up, in my case, doing is it separated me and disconnected me from brothers, cousins, and other people in the family. I knew that things that I were doing weren't perfect, and I wasn't being accurately seen, which I think is a human thing that we all want to be, that we have yearnings to be seen, to be known, to matter, to know we exist. And so during my lifetime, what I did, and I think what a lot of people do, is we start building brick walls. So now I want to hide my insecurity. I want to hide the fact I'm not perfect. I want to hide fill in the blank. And what that did was it created a false self, and it created a character of who I am. And that really was unacceptable. And so I've spent 40 years on undoing brick by brick by brick all of those defenses. And so now I actually show up for who I am. I don't mind confronting. I don't mind challenging. I don't mind being challenged. As I said, you can't really offend me because in my training now, no matter what's being said, no matter what's being projected, no matter what's being transferred, there's always a kernel of truth. And so when I was doing my work, one of my leaders said, I'm really tired of how you are deceitful, how you obfuscate, how you change the goalposts, and how you make things really hard for other people. So I'm going to give you an assignment. And the assignment was that for a year, students, friends, professors, people had open season to tell me exactly what they thought of me. My job was to defend nothing. It was to be active listening. It was to hear what they had to say and find the kernel of truth. Well, I think I'm a pretty quick learner, so I found the kernel of truth, but the last part of the assignment was to find the humor. I didn't find anything humorous at all, and it took me about 7.5 months, and then it finally clicked in how funny it is that what I'm hiding, everybody already knows, but they're not telling me. They're just waiting for me to tell them or waiting for me to show up. And we see this over and over and over. And so I feel, so I'm 73 years old now, and I feel like the challenge in the last half of life or the last quarter of life is, am I willing to die for who I am, or will I die as a character that I didn't even play well? And so for me, I'm not willing to be the character and I didn't play it well. I want to go being as much of myself in total integrity, in total honesty as I can possibly be. And so my gift is, having done this journey, is to be able to work with others and easily see the genius within them, see the gifts within them. I can work with people to actually become who they're meant to become, moment by moment by moment by moment. So for me, transformation is instantaneous. It's not a 5-year run at it. It's moment by moment, moment by moment, moment by moment. What new insights? So part of the transformation model that I learned was, what's the yearning in the moment? To be seen, to be known, to be felt, to be loved, to touch, to be touched, to make a contribution, to be acknowledged. What's that yearning, and how do I engage it? And if I engage that yearning, then what do I receive in return? So I'll give you an example. If my yearning is, I want to be connected, but my belief is I'm alone and on my own, the world is a scary place, and people don't want to help me. Well, guess what? That belief makes it really hard to be connected, to think that the world is safe and secure, that I can trust other people. And so when I engage that yearning, I start asking for things. And as I start asking for things and people say, sure, I'll do that for you. So, Abram, would you call me an Uber? I'm running late. Matthew, I'm running late on a project. Could you give me a half an hour of your time? I'm out with people and I go, my hands are full. Would you mind opening the door for me? And so the more I engage in this new behavior, the more I'm going, you know what, that belief doesn't work anymore. Actually, people do want to help me. Actually, people would like me to succeed. So as I get that learning, I now start making different behaviors, different choices, having different experiences that come with different memories. And this is the opportunity of our brains for neuroplasticity. So when a belief system gets replaced at its core over and over and over and is habituated, this is how I become the next best version of myself. So our brains have all these neurons in them, and what fires together wires together. So if this new belief gets habituated and it's done over and over and over and over, the old belief, that neuron capacity disappears and the new one comes in place. And so we're always having an opportunity to grow ourselves up to be the best of who we can become. And if I'm dedicated to that moment by moment and I create awareness moment by moment by moment by moment, then I continually evolve to be the gifted genius that I am. And it's the same for everybody. So that's kind of what I think about the journey. And so if I'm willing to create these new experiences, I can have a childhood I never had. I can create it myself. I can manifest it. And if I believe it and I reinforce it, then it will create a new experience. And this is, for me, the healing of trauma. So I've gone through lots of different traumas. I don't know anybody who leaves life unscathed. And the real question is not so much what happened, but what's the meaning that I want to give to it. So I think that that in terms of Joseph Campbell and bringing home the reward is that becoming who I can become is my greatest gift. It's not to worry about, will people accept me, will people judge me, will people do whatever. I have no control of what people think or what people feel. That's up to them. But what I do have control of is who I am. And I think that's our greatest gift.
Dan, that's amazing. It's so powerful. Everything I'm inspired by you and your story, and there's so many things I want to ask you. But first of all, I just want to say thank you for sharing. It resonated with me in many ways, and particularly you're talking about trusting your own authority, that inner authority. That's something I've dealt with. Trying to questioning myself and trying to get the approval of others. But not just making impossible standards to be enough. And I'm just inspired by, it's like you've reverse engineered a process to be like, it's like when there's an obstacle, you create a new set of actions that transforms behavior and gives you a new experience of yourself and of life. And that's just beautiful. And I'm just inspired by how you shared that process. And it's funny. I didn't talk to you about this, Dan, but one of the things we've been working on is we have a collaborative book, and we've been working on book titles, subtitles, and this whole process. And as you were talking, I heard. I mean, there's a lot of words that are jumping around about this context of transformation, and as you were sharing, I really heard the art of becoming. That was one of the titles that we're kicking around. But I just really heard who you're being and what you're creating, moment to moment for yourself, but also in how you're sharing with others. Is you've created an art of becoming, and it's in the face of those obstacles, in that hero's journey for each and all of us are on our own hero's journey. And as you put it so eloquently, whether it's Star Wars or Harry Potter, when we all have a dragon to slay or a Goliath to slay, and some of us rise to the call and some of us don't, or some of us start to rise to that call and then kind of run away because of the size of that dragon, and then kind of come back up to maybe give a few swings and then run away again. So it's a journey. It's not, but what you're saying about how transformation is not that, it's something I've seen for myself. There's a saying, a lot of, my friends have shared this saying is, yesterday's transformation is today's ego trip. I kind of see that's how you're talking about it, because it's not a one and done checklist. It's like, okay, I fixed that, I'm good, and there's nothing else to do. La, 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 I can't hear you. It's not tuning out after we've done transform one thing or one behavior. It is a journey, and it's almost like, I want to hear your thoughts, but it's like part of the hero's journey is obviously where you're headed, and who you choose to become, and what you create for yourself, and what meaning you create for what's important to you in your life. And in essence, it's still not about the destination, because there's no getting. I mean, when we get there, we're dead. It's really like, it's being present, it's being here and now, and it's on the hero's journey is not the hero's destination.
Yeah, exactly. It's circular, right?
Yeah.
It's not linear, it's circular. And so there's a continuity of life, right? So one of the things I kind of have lots of heroes and things, but I don't know if you ever read J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye.
Years ago, I read
Okay,
that
so
in high school.
So Holden's biggest fear is becoming an adult, that he would have to leave his adolescence behind. And his reaching of the brass ring when he's on the merry-go-round is symbolic of the continuity, that you don't leave yourself behind. It's the circle of life.
Right. You bring that
Right?
child adolescence with you.
We don't leave anything behind, but we grow and we advance, and our past is what allows us to become who we are. If we didn't have these traumas, setbacks, upsets, we'd have no catalyst to move forward. So what we seek is just outside our comfort zone. You don't even have to go 80 miles
Yeah.
outside of it. You just have to get outside of it. And outside of the comfort zone is where you get to play.
Right. That's well,
Yeah.
thank you for that reminder. That's so true. It is on the other side of our comforts that are most, not only the most growth, but the most eventful thing, the most joy, the most, the most possibility is not in our comfort zone. It's the things that we are afraid to explore. And kind of another way of putting it, there's a book called the War of Art, and one of the things that it talk about is, how basically the premise of the book is, every, I would say every living person, but every person who's a creative or a creator, the biggest, enemy to a creative person is resistance, and resistance comes in many forms. But one of the biggest kind of forms or manifestations of that is fear. Is And it's, there's kind of a formula that you kind of develop, and I see that this is what you very much practice, is fear is our compass, or our biggest obstacles, what's in the way is our compass to what to focus on, what to transform next. So and that's part of the hero's journey, because if the hero's journey if we knew our fate and knew what obstacle is going to come, and I know I have to go through this door and then I go to that door, that leaves out the discovery. And that's the discovery in this moment of what it is that and I love what you're saying about the teacher's exercise, about it's brilliant how how you had to actively listen to what they thought about you, and find the humor in that. And so I want to ask you now, it's like where, like, it sounds like you found the humor in it now, but like, what do you say to that young version of yourself that he didn't hear before, that you now hear?
Well, there was a big process that I went through about forgiveness. And the forgiveness was more for myself than actually my parents, right? That I tapped down my own genius, that I took on my own personal responsibility, right? And so that inner child, for men particularly, but women have the same, they don't come out unscathed either, right? And so it really was working with the inner child in the shadow work to know that we all have parts within us and that all parts are acceptable. So even if a parent or a teacher or somebody told us that there was something about us that was unacceptable, they could have been accurate for the moment, maybe accurate forever. And so what? That's a part of me, and that's acceptable, right?
Mm,
I didn't come here perfect. I came here to have a human experience and learn and grow. And for my soul to be complete, I need to complete my work. So I don't know if that's in my ancestral DNA. I don't know if that's in my karma. I don't know if that's what I chose to do. And it doesn't matter. I don't really need to know. But at the end of the day, the only thing that matters is, do I love myself? All of me.
right. And
Yeah.
that's
And if
exactly
I
it.
do, I don't have any fear of showing you my frailties or my insecurities or, whatever. And so, as men, what we're hearing from women is, we want you to be more intimate. We want you to be sharing your fears and your emotions. My question for the women is, have you done your work so you could hold the space? Because it might kill you. I don't mean that literally, but if you haven't done a lot of work, you're not going to create a space that's psychologically safe where you can hear me and not take it on for you. So in other words, I've got a wife and kids. I have 2 kids in college. I have a big home. We go on a lot of vacations, and I'm hearing at work that there's going to be a lot of layoffs, and there's a good chance mine's coming. Can I go home and tell my wife, who's having this beautiful life, that I'm feeling really insecure? I might be laid off. It might change how we live. And have her go, that's okay, Dan. We're in this together and it's all going to work itself out. How many people do that? Some do, not all of them do. How many divorces happen to men because the woman goes, if you're not going to be the ATM machine, you're not going to do this, that, and the other, I don't need to be here. So it's both of us that have to do our work, right? How do we sit and communicate with each other that doesn't build up resentment, that doesn't build up you don't get me, that doesn't build up you don't share enough? So for guys, we fight, flight, freeze, which is the way when you argue with a partner or a spouse, which one do you do? And you might do all of them. You might do, oh shit, I don't really know what to do. Oh, I'm going out now. I'll be back in a half an hour. So I'm doing freezing and leaving, right? Well, how does that all happen? So how can I sit and hold the space for you to say whatever you need to say to me and have an empathy and an active listening where you feel me feeling you, feeling you? That's the game. Yeah. It's really hard if you're going to be defensive, if you're going to be offended, if you're going to, I don't want to be blamed, blah, 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 blah. You don't do this. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but I took the garbage out. No. That's not what we're talking about, asshole. Right? Well, yeah, I know it's funny because it's only funny because it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it weren't true, it wouldn't be funny. So all of us have our work to do, right? To be available. And so particularly in marriage, if the 5-year-old girl is driving the bus and not the wise woman, and the 5-year-old boy is driving the bus and not the man, that happens all the time. And you do that enough, and it's like, we're done with you on both sides. And I hear this all the time because I work with a lot of men in men's groups, and, and I have it as my own experience before I did the next phase of my work that wouldn't have that be happening now. Because my angry little boy was driving the bus a lot.
Right.
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't get angry, but he doesn't drive the bus anymore. I thank him for making me aware that that's how he's feeling. And I want him to know I've got this. So we're not going to be doing that to our detriment anymore. Now, that doesn't mean it works 100% of the time. There's times where I screw it up. Right? But I don't beat myself up about it. I don't have an inner critic about it anymore. I reassigned my inner critic, so I don't have one. And it sounds simple, I reassigned him, but I did a lot of work to do that.
It's so powerful, Dan, how you're sharing. And I want to let Matthew, I'm sure he has some questions, but just what you're saying resonates with me on a lot of levels. But I love that it's really ultimately about, making peace, finding completion about all the parts of ourselves, usually from the past. And it's like we all have those, whether it's literal wounds, whether it's psychological, physical, emotional, or just experiences that traumatized us that didn't make us not want to do a certain thing or talk about a certain or whatever. But what you're talking about is like each of us taking responsibility for those wounds, loving that part of ourselves and doing the work. Kind of what the exercise that one teacher gave you is like really doing that for not only the present me and the symptoms of all this happening, but really digging deep from that little child in me and that little child in all of us.
Yeah, so like for example, there's sort of this thing called a love sponge. So if the only way I think I'm lovable is when I am at risk because mom is demanding things and maybe I don't want to do it, but if I don't, I won't be loved. Then if I'm performing all the time for love, I'm missing out parts of the sponge where people can just love me for who I am and I wouldn't even recognize it because I didn't do anything. Wait a minute, I have to perform, I have to, commit, I have to make you feel better or whatever the fill in the blank is, right? That's not a very good way of surviving or living a life. And so the question becomes, am I going to live a life of reactivity where everything bounces off me and I get triggered all the time? Or do I live a life of intention? If you're a top performer like I was in business, I was excellent at striving. I wasn't excellent at striving with purpose. At this stage, I'm striving less and far more purposeful, and I'm working a lot less hard to get a lot further in the game, because when I understand my purpose fully, I can trust the universe to deliver exactly what it needs to when I need it. And my ability now to manifest is exponentially greater than me trying to force everything. So I don't just sit back, make an affirmation, and go, oh, the world's going to work. I don't do that. But when I'm really clear, then I kind of know the 3 or 4 things I need to do. And I also know that if I'm not controlling it and I get out of the way, it's going to come much bigger than if I'm in the way.
So this is actually a perfect place to dive into something that we haven't talked about much on this show. Like I resonate with it, and I have my own experience with it. So like when you say, you know, as a soul, I chose to be born here. I chose to live this life. I chose to come here this time with these parents and learn these things. Like I get that. I resonate with that. Like I've had experiences that have demonstrated that to me in some way. Now, is it true or not? I have no earthly idea. But the story itself, one, resonates with me, and two, opened up an entirely new line of inquiry that has helped me tremendously moving forward. So I'm curious about your own experience. Like, how did you come to that confidence? Or I'm not sure exactly what it is that is behind that, but I'm very curious what's behind that for you and what gives you that confidence to say that.
Yeah, how do I? Well, I actually believe, and it's just a belief, but I believe that every one of us is divinely inspired. And the question is, so if I'm in fear, I know I'm not connected to spirit. And when I'm not in fear, I know I totally am. And so when I sit and just having this conversation today, I have no idea what I told you today. If you asked me, could you repeat what you said? I'd go, I don't know, because I'm channeling it. I'm downloaded. I'm connected in a way that I become a conduit. And I felt that from the very beginning. You know, I don't know how that all showed up, but it did. And like I say, I have this ability to hold on.
No worries. I understand the puppies.
The dog wanted to chime in.
Oh, hold on.
Your point.
Dan, you muted yourself.
So I have felt that I had an ability from an early age to look at people and figure them out and know who they were. And when I was in college, people would come and talk to me all the time about their stuff. And it was like, yeah, I know that. And I knew what to do with it. I knew how to play the chess pieces. And I think that's a part. One of my gifts is I see the world differently. And I think part of that is because I don't see limited possibility. I see infinite possibility. I believe I play in the quantum field of possibility. Now, that doesn't mean I don't have limits, but that doesn't mean that I don't believe it could be whatever I want it to be. So there's a certain empirical sense, right? So I think Abram was talking about ontological experience, right? That's the experience of being versus doing. The phenomenological is the lived experience of what I'm experiencing out in the world. And I somehow was grounded much more in being than doing. I'm a big thinker. I'm a visionary. I'm a thought leader. I'm a I'm out here and people look at me like you're nuts. I can't tell you how many people have said, do you ever plan to get into reality? Well, as human beings, reality is not what is, it's what we give meaning to of what is. And so in every corporation I was in, they were like, can you teach this to people? And I'm like, no, I can't. That's my gift, right? I have an ability of looking at a million dots and putting something together that almost no one else would have thought of to put together. That's a skill. It's kind of like there are people that are singers that are so divinely singers that I don't care how much you would practice, you could never get there. So, on the music side, Abram, I'm thinking of, is life 1, 2, 3, 4, or is life more spontaneous like jazz? How does jazz come together? It pulls from different things, and it's intuitive and it's felt, and it's different than just reading, the page, the song chart. It's different.
Right. It's not
And
necessarily following a conductor the same way.
yeah. So I don't know that answers the question, Matthew, but it's I don't know. I have this spiritual connection, and I know it's real. And I know that the upset that most of us have is when we're out of alignment with who we are. That's our spirit and our soul demanding more of us. And instead of being fearful about going for it, it's the joy of, I couldn't fail if I wanted to. That doesn't mean every experience works out, by the way, because sometimes what's demanded is us not to get what we want. So it's not it always has to work. Sometimes the lesson I need to learn is that what's not working.
So before I ask my next question, I feel drawn to push you a little bit. How do you know it's real? Like I normally never do this. Like this is not something I would normally ever do, and but the question's there. Or actually, let me ask it a different way. What makes it real to you?
What makes it real to me
Yeah.
is that I believe it's real and I act out of its reality. And so if I have a question, I put it into the universe and I get answers. I just do. So I'll go to bed at night and go, you know what? I don't know how to fix this. And then I wake up at between 3 and 4 in the morning is when I get my downloads. And I go, oh, okay. Yeah, that answers everything. And I have a little notebook by my bedside and I write all the shit down because by 7 o'clock, I don't remember anything that happened. Yeah.
I would love to hear one example of that.
It's an opening to a channel, and whether it's my conscious mind, subconscious mind doing it and has nothing to do with spirit world, doesn't matter. Right? What matters is that I have a process that works for me.
Absolutely.
And I don't need to question it. Right? Isn't that kind of what faith is? And I think, the problem with religion for me is that it's dualistic. Whereas in my spirit world, it's not dualistic at all. There's no intermediary. I play direct with source. If I have to go through a priest, if I have to go through a rabbi, if I have to go through a monk, if I have to go through somebody else, I don't have the direct connection. There's an interrupt that goes on there. And I think out of trusting, I don't need to trust anyone else. I need to trust myself. I am my ultimate authority. That's what sovereignty is. So when you do this king, warrior, magician, lover, which is the archetypal pattern for a man, a lot of people think in order to sit on the throne, it's the adult man that's on the throne. It's the healed inner child who can bring blessing, who can bring safety, who can bring all of the different things that make sense. because that's healed.
I feel like that's what that question was about, is looking for the sovereignty piece.
Yeah.
And it's something that I invite for myself and everyone that I work with, is to be your own sovereign. And I'm curious, what has your experience, like, is that something you invite from others? And what has your experience been from others when you give them that invite?
Wait, say that again. What's my
So,
experience? What?
so is that an invitation that you put out to other people to become sovereign? And if so,
Yep.
what has been your experience with others when they receive that invitation?
Well, there's nothing I can do about helping them to be sovereign other than to be reflective and hold the mirror. My experience with men is that I see them in ways their parents didn't. I can get to their their core and their genius, and they've never had anybody do that for them. Hey, so that's a gift, right? If you were told as a little boy, you'll never amount to anything, and a lot of kids are told that. You're not going to be beautiful enough. You won't be tall enough. You won't be rich enough. No one will want to marry you. Fill in the blank of all of those things that are downloaded into you. I don't come from that. I just see who you are. And when you're actually seen and known and you matter, you have a whole opening for a new life.
Oh.
So tell me 3 of your earliest experiences. Tell me your birth order. Tell me mom's favorite, dad's favorite. What can you expect from the world, and what can the world expect from you? And then I'll know who you are. And then I'll know from what you've said what you haven't said. And if you're active listening, at least in my experience, I don't care what you say. I'm hearing all the things you're not saying. And those are the things that if I can reflect that, that becomes the opening.
Would you be willing to step into that with one of us right now?
Oof. I'll give it a try. but usually the amount of vulnerability and that sort of thing, it's not. I'll try it. We'll do it. We'll see how it goes.
I'm open to it.
Okay.
I'm open to it. So what were the questions again? Start at the beginning.
Tell me 3 of your earliest experiences
that I can remember. Dying. I stepped into a yellow jacket's nest when I was about 2.5 years old. And the doctor said I was stung 142 times before my heart stopped. And they had to resuscitate me 3 times on the way to the hospital. And I remember bits and pieces of that. I don't remember all of it, but I do remember bits and pieces of it. The next one that comes, that was about 2.5. The next one that comes is about 3 or 4. And I remember running through the apartment complex where we lived in Dallas, Texas at the time, with my Cocker Spaniel, who my parents got. She was the exact same age as I was. I just remember running through the complex by myself with her, going to the pool. And then the next one that comes is I was about 5 years old, and I was sitting in my dad's lap in the driver's seat of the car, steering the car as we were driving down these backcountry roads to a waterfall, to Fall Creek Falls in Tennessee.
Okay. The last two don't help me a lot, but that's all right. We'll go with them. So, what's your birth order?
I was the first. I'm the oldest of two.
Okay. So, within that, you have another brother or sister?
Younger brother.
Who's the one that's thriving the most?
Honestly, that's hard to say because I haven't talked to him in about 4 years. So I don't know. Last time we talked, it was probably me.
Okay. Mom's favorite and dad's favorite.
Dad, I have no earthly idea. Mom, I feel like me by just a little bit.
So, say more about that.
I grew up in almost the exact same way you did. Like, we didn't have the affluent lifestyle, but dad was emotionally absent. He just wasn't there. He was always working. He was always trying to start a business, do something. And I became the surrogate husband. And I was the surrogate husband for a long time, up until I literally had to break up with mom when I was 24, 25, somewhere on there. And I've had to break up with her a couple of times since then.
All right. So, what can you expect from the world, and what can it expect from you?
From the world, the way I think about it now, I don't expect anything. And the only thing it can expect from me is for me to be as authentic as I possibly can.
Okay. And why can't you expect anything from the world?
In the way I think about it now, like, yeah, it's actually kind of a silly way to put it. Actually, no, I let me rephrase. What I expect from the world is lessons. Like, I expect to be taught. I expect a chance to grow. I expect a chance to become bigger than what I was when I got here, to outgrow how I started.
Can you trust the world?
I don't need to. I trust myself.
Uh-huh. Is the world safe?
Nothing in this world can hurt me.
Are you alone and on your own?
No.
No. Because I'm not hearing how you're operating in the world.
That's because right now I'm mostly in an incubation period.
What does that mean?
My partner and I are starting a company, and we are very limited in our interactions with other people and the world at large.
That's not possible if you're starting a company not to be engaged in the world.
And I didn't say not engaged, I say very limited.
Uh-huh.
Most of what we're doing is together with ourselves. So we're coming up with copy for marketing materials. We're coming up with messaging. We're planning out workshops. We're like, there's a lot of things that each of us have had a lot of experience. Like, she's a yoga teacher and a breathwork coach and a corporate health practitioner. And she's trained in psychotherapy and hypnotherapy and a few other things. And I have come up through mostly the shamanic path. So I am much more familiar with energy work and emotional work. And I resonate a lot with how you describe the world, actually. Like, it's very similar to the way I talk and the way I share, and the way I present information and invite people to step into their own experience. And so we are kind of getting on the same page about the messaging that feels appropriate to share. And then the next step is to step out and actually start taking corporate clients. And the intention is to step into corporate leadership training and to teach corporate executives how to create, first of all, how to come into alignment with themselves, and then how from that aligned space to create an aligned workspace where people actually want to show up to work and feel like they're there co-creating and are engaged and are loved and are valued instead of just showing up for a paycheck.
So here's a question. If you really knew me, fill in the blank.
The first thing that comes is, if you really knew me, you know I don't play games.
Okay, say more. If you really knew me, give me another one.
If you really knew me, yeah, like that's the one that keeps coming, is like you would know I don't play games. I don't I don't follow the rules. I don't follow the programming. I don't accept ego. I don't accept like, I understand it, I get it, but like, if you're going to interact with me, if you're going to work with me and you're going to be with me, then I'm going to ask you and invite you to be real. And if you can't do that, then we're not going to continue to work together.
I'm afraid to tell you, fill in the blank.
I'm often afraid to tell you what I really see and how I really feel.
Thank you. That's the most honest thing I've heard so far. For me, it has nothing to do with you, by the way. But I was going to ask you, how open do you think I think you are with me? On a scale of 1 to 10, how revealing, authentic, honest, open do you think I see you?
Somewhere between a 4 and a 5, probably.
Mm-hmm. So my work with you would be to be much more open. And my sense is that the thing with mom has a protective armor that's been created. So I have that sense. I have the sense that in terms of the birth order, the reason I ask that is usually I'm the second child, but there's usually the first child is always the king. And there's two options usually, well, there's three. But the two options are either I'll overtake the king or I'll sublimate. Right? And it sounds to me like you held your ground and he may be somewhat underneath that. And I know maybe the last couple of years you haven't talked with him, but in growing up with my brother, I overtook everybody in my family. And I don't mean by a little, I mean by like fucking tsunamis. And by the time I was 6, my uncle said, I don't know anybody with the level of ambition that you have. I don't care how old they are. Right? And so, you know, as I'm looking at that kind of a thing, I'm wondering, like, in a way, I heard from you that there's like this cocooning going on between you and the partner in the business. And so for me, I'm sort of saying that the world right now isn't an ocean to play in. And that doesn't mean it may not become that, but my sense is that there's a closed offness that's probably going to, even once it's all done, might take place. So if I were to ask you, what's your kryptonite?
That's a damn good question.
I get paid a lot of money to ask good questions.
Not expressing myself.
Yeah, that comes across loud and clear. And so for me, seeing you is, I just know there's a ton within you that has incredible experience and value, and that there's something holding it back. And so somehow it feels to me there's an energy of you having been judged along the way in ways that, so I guess the way for me to put it is, I see this armor. And I think for a lot of men, we have armor, right? But I think underneath there's a tenderness and a gentleness and a wellspring of capability and knowledge and love that can come out. That's my sense of it.
Thank you. I've been working. I have no earthly idea how to take that armor off right now. I've peeled off so many layers, and where like I've gotten to this place now with my current partner where every single tool that I have learned to use to like reveal this armor and address it and to remove it and to like heal the trauma, basically, they don't seem to work anymore. And there's just this point, and she's very, very good at pushing me to this point, which is why I really appreciate her, where I freeze. So that fight, flight, or freeze, completely freeze. And it's totally subconscious. I cannot, like, I don't seem to have any control over it. I'm sure that I can, but like right now, it's just like, it's like my throat locks up. I can't say anything. I can't. And it feels like it's something stupidly simple.
So
don't see it right now.
What is the core belief?
That is the question. I don't know.
So if you were to go back and look at your 4-year-old boy or 5-year-old boy, what's your experience of dad? What did he say to you? Or was he just so freaking absent that was it?
Feels more like the latter, the absence, because I don't remember much of that, my childhood. Like I don't have much experience of it. I don't remember it. It's all just blank.
So that would be part of the work, is to actually uncover that. Right. So there's something deep and hidden there that's painful, that would be better left buried than brought to the surface. So when you're peeling the onion, what I'm hearing is the outside layers is how you peel an onion, and you have to get to the bottom of the core. It's like the apple. If I don't get to the core, right, the core is the part I don't want to eat because I want all the sweet fruit around it.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere along the line, there's, you're not good enough. You're not worthy of, if dad never really interacted with you, it's like, I must be worthless. I must not be enough if he can't even see me, feel me, know who I am, whatever those issues are. And the flip side of that, on what you've described with mom, there's some things that we could do around that as well. So it would be, what I do is I work with people on their core paradigm. So how did that belief get formed? Why is it still in place? What's the payoff? There's a benefit to having it stay in place, right? It's scary to think that, because my egoic mind is fine with it. That's who I am. I'm good with it. We don't need to change a whole lot. Just stay where we are. I'm good, right? But there's an underneath of that that goes, no, we're not good. And that would be the work.
Yeah, I am very familiar with this, and
We are.
yeah,
That's the joke. We are. It's
yeah,
not
exactly. Like it's just I don't know. I thank you. Thank you very much for playing that with me and like really demonstrating how you work. And I am very conscious of the time, so I want to kind of let Abram jump back in and see where we're at.
That was powerful to observe. That was
Time is an illusion.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Time is an
illusion. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Time is an illusion. The only thing that matters is the present moment. So if you're being depressed or sad, you're living in your past, which is already gone and has no meaning. And if you're anxious, you're living in a future worried about outcome that isn't here. And so to what extent can I be in the present moment? That's where the power is. That's where I can choose what I want. I can't choose it when I'm depressed in the past and reinforcing that with my behavior. And if I'm anxious out here, I'm catastrophizing, I'm in black and white, I'm, oh my God, the whole thing's going to fall down. And of course, that never happens, but it could happen. Could. But right now, I've got a house, I have air conditioning, I have food, I have, I'm safe. Okay, so now in the present moment, what can I do? So if I'm in that fight, flight, freeze, if I'm in that depressed anxiety state, then I'm in the amygdala, and that's the fight, flight, freeze. And when I do that, I shut down the neocortex. That's my planning, my executive function, my decision making, my having an ability to see possibility. But the amygdala is 20,000 times more powerful than the neocortex. So if I'm going to live there, which is what society is doing right now through COVID, that was an amygdala fire 24/7, 365. This is why people are on burnout. This is why they're quiet quitting. This is why they don't see their lives. This is right.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a state that's healthy to be in. And we have the wherewithal to bring ourselves back to the present.
Thank you for that.
To me, like that's like the beautiful thing about that to me is that it's not sustainable either. Like we cannot physically hold that for an extreme period of time, and at some point, like our bodies just burn out.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like that, like for me, that just comes back to the body is the user manual. And if I'm feeling burnt out, if I'm feeling angry, if I'm feeling, then like I'm in that state, and that's a clue. And it's like, okay, stop, breathe, be present, be here.
So Matthew, if you continue to use your partner as the person who can do all these things for you, and you don't pick up that mantle, it'll fray the relationship.
Yeah.
Because instead of it additive, it's I'm now responsible for you. That's not a good place for her to be. It's not a good place for you to be. But having recognized it is interesting. And so when she comes to help you with that, what's her name?
Katya.
Yeah. So Katya, stop. I need to do this myself. And then you'll work at it. Right? But if you keep allowing it, this is where codependency comes in, and this is where a breakdown happens because I can't. It's like being addicted. I can't do it enough, and I can't really be your I can do it in my work with you the way I'm working, because that's what I'm choosing to do to get to a new outcome. But in a partnership, right, I don't want that other person to have that as their requirement.
Yeah.
And that takes you on a whole different journey, which is cool.
It is. And I
I expect you to solve this problem within the next 30 minutes. Well, actually, when I work with people, I ask them, would you like to solve it today, next week, next month, or next year? Because we can do whatever you want. No, really.
I feel like I already got it.
Oh, that's
No.
no. No, because it needs to be reinforced. So you're going to have an aha moment now, which is great. But 2 days from now, let me know if it sustains, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, what is it that I need to do every day to reinforce this new revelation?
Right.
And what new activities am I going to try? Right? So how am I going to liberate from this old idea to this new way of being?
Yeah.
Because if I just do it once in the moment, it won't stay.
Right. It has to become a practice, and the practice then becomes the new behavior.
And then it becomes second nature. Yeah. And that's when the old neurons that wire together, that belief neuron disappears, because it doesn't have more room unless something goes. And this is how we become who we become, are these new firings and wirings.
Matthew, I was telling Dan earlier about how we've been working on book titles. And when I was hearing his share, I heard the art of becoming and who he's being and what he's doing. Just that process. I just hear what you were just walking through is the art of becoming. And it was just, It was a marvel to behold and to observe. And, I feel like there's still more there. And unfortunately, I actually got to jump off, but I don't want to stop from what you guys have opening up.
I think we're good for the day.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I didn't want to interrupt that, but
He's got amazing. Are you noticing he has a totally different face, totally different body, totally different energy than where we started today. He's alive now. He was in his head before. He's in his aliveness now.
Me in my head, never. No.
That's the game.
Yeah. It's it was. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that again because I'm gonna ask myself those questions. Yeah, it's really I really appreciate your process. Again, the process of what you create and how you reverse engineer this self-discovery of what's blocking us. And I think we all have armor for different things, different triggers, different, and for me, a lot of the conversation was, and it still creeps in, is being enough and trusting my own inner authority of being enough, and where I will throw myself into person doing versus human being and get overwhelmed and I'm not doing enough. It's not good enough. I have to do this right. It's not going to be good. It's just like, well, I will work myself up into an overthinking mess. I always joke, I could be an Olympic, or I could be if there was a thought Olympics, I would have gold medals. So I could think about thinking, and then ask you what you think about it.
Yeah.
That's my journey. And Dan, I just really just inspired by you, appreciate you, and just really real pleasure to have you. And we'd love to have you back and share some more. I just love not only who you're being and what you're up to, but how you do it is just an awe to behold and to observe. So it was really inspiring just to watch you in action.
Thanks. Yeah, it's fun. It's what I'm here to do, right? So change one life at a time, but have an impact.
Yeah, well, it shows. We observed it in real time.
Cool.
And there you have it,
thanks
folks.
thanks for the invite. I'll see you on Rook. And Matthew, good luck on the new business. And I think if you're going to train leaders, then I think the more that you open up you, I think you'll have a good time at it.
Yeah.
Right. But I think
Yeah.
I think if you're going to ask others to be vulnerable, you have to show up vulnerably.
Mm.
Right. You have to be willing to expose in you know, and you have we all have a certain cadence. Right. I slowed my cadence down to work with you. Right. But we still went pretty rapid. I would be much slower if I were working like as a client. Right. I would ask that same question 8 or 9 or 10 times before I'd let go of it. Right. And
Mhm.
so I think how you're seen will matter to the extent that you will not get people to open more to you than you will open to them. They won't be more empathetic with you than you are with them.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think if we have that equality idea in mind, then how far would I be willing to go? Okay.
We'll
There
find
you have
out.
it. There you have it. It's we're gonna
All right, you guys. Now,
love
what
to have you
happens
back.
to Evan? What happens to this now? Because I need you to delete this. I don't want anybody to know this about me.
Don't you worry. It's on this site that will go away in a couple of years called YouTube and Facebook. Um,
Well, my kids will see it and go, "Hey, I never knew that."
we'll just say Dan Silberberg's kids don't watch this.
Can you just
make
change
that.
the name?
Yeah, we'll use AI. We'll put a new face on you and a new voice.
Yeah,
And
exactly. Perfect.
thank you
All
so
right, you
much.
guys.
Dan,
Love
thank
to
you.
have-
Thank you.
Yeah, this has been great. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Thank you
Our
for
pleasure.
Thank you for showing up. Like really
Yeah.
showing up.
Yeah, that's what
Yes,
we're supposed
thank
to
you.
do in life. Show up.
Absolutely.
And why not?
Yeah, and why not?
Bye.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I definitely want to check back in with Dan in the future and receive more of his wisdom. But thank you all for being with us. I want to just take this opportunity to invite you to share your gifts, share your genius on this stage. There's a link on the bottom of the screen. But we want to invite you. You have something unique that, like Dan, that can make a difference for me, for Matthew, for everybody you come across. And we want to receive your gift, but we also want to share it with others. And that's why we're here, is to receive and share your gifts. And that's part of what One Day is about. Our mission is bringing you and me and communities together in joyous celebration, unifying humanity in our diversity to create a better world for us all. And our vision is humanity is rising in a connected world with each person's unique gifts, unique genius, unique contributions being valued and magnified through a higher level of collaboration, producing unprecedented new realms of possibility. Thank you all so much again for being here. We will see you next time. Be safe, be well, and as always, one day is today. Peace, everybody.